The first step in building an online course selling business is figuring out who it is that you're trying to serve. Because if you don't know who you're helping, you're probably not helping anyone. And that's why in this video, I am going to help you identify the audience for your course selling business. So if you're new here, my name is Devlin Peck, and I built a 7-figure course selling business without spending a penny on paid ads. And now I'm sharing everything that I've learned here for free on YouTube to help you do the same. So let's dive into it. The first thing to keep in mind is that identifying your audience is not rocket science. Depending on who you listen to, sometimes it can feel like this because people suggest that you know like exactly how old your audience is and what music they listen to on the way to work and like whether they have dogs or cats at home, and it gets really specific. I've felt insecure in the past, not like knowing that level of specificity, but that is not necessary to build a very successful business. So don't be alarmed. We can be a bit more general and still find a lot of success. So one way to go about this is to think about which identity you would like to serve. So there are professional identities. So for example, instructional designer, software engineer, pretty much any job title out there, someone identifies as that or wants to identify as that. There are also hobby-driven identities. So gardeners, painters, writers, gamers. Think of your hobbies. I'm sure you identify with them in some way. And then there are personal identities. So for example, husbands, mothers, people who are transgender. The list goes on and on. I'm sure there are even more types of identities that I'm not covering here. But if you can identify an identity that people connect with, that is probably a good option for who to serve in your course selling business. And I have some guided questions to help you get closer. So ask yourself, who do you have the expertise to serve? So for example, I'm probably not going to create a course selling business to help mothers because I am a man and I don't even have any children at this point in time. So I'm probably not going to have a lot of credibility or expertise in how to raise children as a mother. So keep that in mind. You're probably going to find the most success with an identity that you connect with or that you hold, because that's where you're going to have the most expertise. It's not impossible to serve people in holding an identity that you haven't held before, but it is going to be a bit more of an uphill battle. So ask yourself again, how familiar are you with the challenges that these people face? Right? If you hold that identity yourself, you probably are quite familiar with it. So for example, I started out serving instructional designers, and I started creating this content to serve instructional designers right after figuring out how to become an instructional designer myself. So I knew what I was Googling. I knew what conversations I was having with mentors. I knew which questions were popping up in my head as I was getting into the field. So I was very familiar with the challenges of getting into instructional design and becoming a successful, competent instructional designer. So I was basically creating content and helping people with all the struggles I had just gone through. And that's the next question here. It's kind of connected to the last one. What are they struggling with? So what are people who identify with this identity you've selected struggling with? What challenges are they facing? What pain points are they struggling with? If you know what is keeping people with this identity up at night and what their challenges are, what they're struggling with, that is going to be the best source of content that you can imagine. So that's why, again, if you identify in this way and you know these challenges and struggles, you're going to have a much easier time finding success. And then also, what do they want to achieve? So you don't just want to know what people's challenges are, but you want to know where they're headed, what they're trying to get to. And here are some examples. So maybe they want to get their first job in the field. I found that when I started helping instructional designers, most of the people I was serving were trying to get that first job in the field. Some people may want to make money from their hobby. They may want to turn their gardening hobby into a business, for example, and maybe you have some expertise in how to do that because you've done the same. That would be a great opportunity for a course selling business. And then going on one of these personal identities, maybe someone's goal is to repair their relationship with their partner and to be more empathetic and just be a better partner overall so that they can enjoy a more fruitful, loving relationship. So these are a few examples. I've tried to introduce some variety there, but feel free to drop ideas in the comments if you wanna run it by me. This is one of my hypotheses. So if you can make it material, you're probably going to find more success. And so the more material, the better. When I say material, I'm referring to like concrete, the more tangible it is in the real world. So for example, your audience may want to be more confident in the workplace or in their lives. I think everyone would appreciate that. Yeah, everyone would probably want to feel more confident in their skill set or in what it is that they're doing professionally or personally. But a good question to ask yourself, if that's like what you've come up with what people want, is to ask, what does that result in? Like, feel more confident so that what? Maybe so that they can get a better job or get a promotion, so that they can earn a higher salary, or so that they can build a successful YouTube business, for example, or achieve better work-life balance so that they can get 10 hours back every week that they can spend with their families or with their kids or with themselves. These things are very tangible in people's lives. And then another example, maybe on the relationship front, is to maybe make more friends. So you have actual, physical people in your life that you can spend time with and make memories with. So that's what I mean by like concrete material things. I'm sure someone out there is probably selling a successful business on how to become more confident. But until you can put that into more concrete material terms for people and what that might translate to in their lives, you're probably not going to have much success selling a more abstract transformation like that. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about what people want to achieve. Try to make it more concrete. And there may be some intermediary steps along the way that your courses help with to get to that end goal, but your audience is probably going to be most interested in that end goal that you're helping them achieve. Feel free to ask questions about that in the comments if that wasn't clear. As kind of a summary or like a checkpoint before you move on to the next video in this playlist where we get into creating content, you're going to want to be able to answer these questions, at least in a general sense. So which identity would you like to serve? What are they struggling with? What do they want to achieve? And how will that achievement make a difference in their lives? So these 4 questions are really important. It's okay if you can't answer them all right now, but at least give it a try. Do your best guess, your best hypothesis, so to speak, of who you think you will be able to serve most easily. And if nothing is coming to mind for some of these, do not despair, because this can and will change over time. Your audience is not fixed. And I know this can be frustrating. It's like, I want to know who I'm serving so I can all of my efforts from the beginning can be very focused and targeted and all of that. It doesn't really work like that, especially in the content creation space. Some of your content is going to explode when you can't really expect it. And it's going to open your mind to a whole part of your audience that you didn't realize had such a high demand for your expertise. And I'll give an example of that in a bit. But essentially, as you create content and reach more people, your audience can and likely will change, right? This doesn't need to be decided right now. This is just a starting point. And starting broad and becoming more specific is a good idea because you can test who you can provide the most value to. So just to give you some insight into my journey, when I started, I was just like, I'm going to help instructional designers. And one of the things that I knew instructional designers struggled with was a really technical kind of coding task. So I was like, I'm going to start creating some content around that. There's not much of this content out there. Right? I struggled figuring out how to do it, so I'm just going to help people do it. And it reached some people, and it was helping some people, maybe hundreds of people or so. But then I created some content on how to become an instructional designer and get your first instructional design job. And that piece of content blew up 10 times bigger than all of these technical pieces of content I was working on. So then it obviously sent me the message, okay, people are a lot more interested in how to get their first job in the field than how to do this really technical part of the job that they wouldn't be doing until much later. And so over time, as I've seen which content people gravitate to the most, it's given me a very good idea of how I can make the biggest impact possible with my time and help the greatest number of people make the biggest difference in their lives. Because, for example, helping people get that first job and double their salaries was way more rewarding for me than helping people learn a technical skill so that they could maybe save themselves a bit of time on the job. And you will find that for you, and it is going to take a little bit of time. So if you already have really specific ideas in mind of your audience, amazing. But if not, again, it will be revised over time. Again, this is a general idea of how I transition my audience. I started with, I'm helping instructional designers. That's the level of specificity I have here. And now I have this more specific kind of audience. I help overworked, burnt out educators become instructional designers so that they don't have to worry about money and can spend more quality time with their families. This is just a general write-up, but again, over time, as I see who's engaging with my content, who's paying for my paid courses, it's overwhelmingly educators coming from kind of a similar position where they're overworked and burnt out, and they all want kind of the same things, which are more freedom to spend time with their families, spend time with themselves, and get more respect on the job, and a whole host of other things. So if you asked me like 6 months ago, I probably wouldn't even be able to word it that specifically, and I've been doing this for over 2 years now. So it takes time. It is going to change over time. It will probably look different another 6 to 12 months from now, and that is okay. So do not despair if you don't have it super specific. So I hope you enjoyed this. If you are open to it, please share in the comments like what your idea is for your audience. I'd love to see some of your journeys through this process, and follow wherever it is you're creating content just to see your progress. So if you want to engage, let us know which audience you've come up with in the comments below. Also, feel free to check out the full guide to selling online courses if you haven't checked that out already. That's the first video in this playlist. And again, I'll be posting a new video every week for at least the next 8, 9, or 10 weeks or so. If you want more, I'll keep it coming every single week. So subscribe for the rest of the playlist. I'm super happy to share all this content with you all, and I appreciate you making it to the end of the video. I will see you in the next one.